started. I'm not sure if everyone's made it to one of the two sessions. If they do, they'll come in a little bit late. But this session is all about kind of creating practice plans and then adjusting them as the year goes on, as the season goes on. I kind of put this together with two different thoughts in mind. One is, yes, we're here in Mongolia. The seasons are relatively short from what I'm used to coaching in the States. But some of the things are applicable in either avenue, whether here coaching or if you do go abroad, kind of how I thought about the season as a whole and how I would change practice throughout the season. Some of you coach, some of you don't coach. Many times in an international school setting, you might be the only person that can coach, and that's just kind of expected that you jump in and supervise these kids for half an hour. So this is kind of my thought process and how I structure my practices and then how it changes throughout the year. So first, I'll just cover just a generic practice plan, kind of the parts that most all of my practices will have. They'll have 4 different parts, and then talk about how I'll try to forge a team. One of my time-wasting endeavors is watching like blacksmithing videos on YouTube, where they're forging knives and forging swords and just making these things out of iron. So I use that analogy just as the season goes on, forging that team, that final product. And then lastly, just a couple tips, one-offs, and maybe answer some questions on how to have a good practice throughout the year. Okay, so my generic practice plan has 4 stages, and it kind of mirrors some of the things that we talked about in the mental side of things, warming up and cooling down like we just talked in our overuse injuries. But we'll have the warm-up. This is generally something that's low intensity. The focus is on getting warm, we're getting loose, we're shaking our body out, we stretch, and we're starting to get in the right mindset. It's kind of the body's signal that, okay, we're now going to play basketball, or we're now going to be in volleyball. And so you're out of school and you're into a focused practice. It's not roll the balls out, shoot around for an hour and a half, see you later, time's done, go home. We're here, we're going to practice, we're going to focus and get better. The next part of practice, it depends on the sport you're doing, obviously, but it's technique or tactics, strategies you're going to use, plays you're going to run. In wrestling, it was a lot of techniques. Okay, we're going to practice a single leg. This is where your hand goes. This is where your feet go. This is how you want to drive into them. Coaching basketball, this is our defensive structure, and we'll run through that. Again, it's often pretty low intensity. As the season progresses, it might start to pick up in intensity as you move a little bit faster. You have less talking and more, okay, let's run through our defense. Let's run through play number 1, play number 2. Hit 20 single leg takedowns. It can pick up in intensity, but generally it's much lower intensity. The focus is often much more mental than it is physical. And you're still kind of in that getting warm aspect. The third section is generally what all the kids are at practice for. If you ask the kids, like, why do you come to basketball practice? To play basketball. And so this is just live action. In wrestling, we call it going live, where both guys are trying their best. In basketball, maybe you have a scrimmage. In volleyball, maybe 3 versus 3 or 6 aside. Football, you have scrimmages. And this is generally the high intensity of your practice. This is often the meat of your practice. This is where you're executing what you've done in the technique session. Okay, we've just worked on our offense. I want to see you run all 3 plays. Or we just practiced rebounding technique. We're going to play live, but I'm watching for rebounds, right? So there might be a focus to that. And generally, it's the meat of practice. It's what the kids come for. It's what they really enjoy. And then the last section is conditioning. I like to end my practices with some form of conditioning. Most of the time, it's pretty high intensity. It's something hard for the kids to do. It's a struggle. It's no longer basketball. It's no longer volleyball. It's no longer wrestling. It's just something that's hard. It's going to get them in shape. Especially here, we don't have a fitness room. We don't have a weight room. There's no time for the kids to really get any strength building or any endurance building. So this is something, okay, we're going to do some wind sprints, or we're going to do some push-up exercises, or we're going to do some form of conditioning. and importantly, it signifies the end of a practice. Because when you end with, a lot of times I've been at practices or I've helped out at practices where, okay, we're going to go through, we practice this, okay, now we're going to play. All right, guys, it's 6 o'clock, go home, and can we stay, can we go? Just one more. They don't know that practice is over, right? There's just kind of cut short on them. They want this to end. Like, they want it to be over. So you're going to do something hard at the end of practice. Practice is finished, you did it, good job, now get out of the gym, I can clean up and go home. It gives them a sense of accomplishment, and one of the important things with a team to build that team aspect, that team dynamic, is they sweat together, they bleed together, they struggle together. So sometimes you can get that in a live game, but often it's that conditioning thing where, hey, we did that really hard thing that coach made us do, so like, we're stronger because of that. So that's why I like to finish my practices with some form of conditioning. Occasionally, depending on the time of the season or how my guys are doing, if they're sore, if they're beat up, it might even be something that's low intensity. Just, all right, we're just going to run through our plays. I'm looking for it to be perfect. So low physical intensity, but maybe high mental intensity. Again, just signifying the end of practice. So if it was volleyball, for example, this is what an average practice might look like. We warm up, we do some jogging, some plyometrics, maybe some footwork or jumping drills, some volleyball-specific things, not super specific, maybe some stretching. It might take 10 to 15 minutes at the times. I'm not very strict on times. I've coached with some coaches who are very strict. They schedule every single minute of practice. I'm much more fluid and kind of take it as it comes. Might be plus or minus 5 to 10 minutes here or there. Technique and tactics. Okay, I want to do this dig cone drill. They touch the cone, get their heart rate up. We're going to work on our positioning on serve receive. Make sure the guys are in the right spot. Can they get the ball when it comes to them? And then my guys are really sucking, to be honest, transitioning from blocking and then receiving a free ball and getting off the net, back to the net, off the net, back to the net. So we're just going to work on it. It's technique. It's not super intense. As they get more comfortable with it, as we've done this drill, the same drills 2 or 3 times later on in the season, it might start to be, okay, block free ball drill, go. And then it's right into it. It's a little bit more intense as the season goes on. Live action, again, we're having 3v3 live games, we're having 6v6, something where they can practice that. And then lastly, conditioning. They're running up and down the stairs. It takes 10-15 minutes, it's hard, it sucks. They want it to be over. We end with the breakdown, bears on 3, 1, 2, 3, bears, go away. Okay, so they know practice is finished, we just did something together, let's celebrate it and get out of here. Track practice might look different. Team sports and individual sports are often very different, but you can still follow the same rough outline. You have your warm-up, a light jog, a team jog and stretch. You're working on technique, which form running, being efficient when you're running, plyometrics, footwork type stuff, handoffs if you're in a relay, working on your steps for long jump, that sort of stuff. Again, just kind of slowly getting more and more warmed up. And then you have your live action, which is the hard stuff, 200-meter repeats. When I ran track, I was an 800-meter runner, and I sucked at pacing. So I would run 200 meters in 30 seconds, over and over and over and over again, trying to hit that 2-minute 800-meter time. And then lastly, conditioning. At the end, it might be something hard. Okay, before you go, make sure you strap on the parachute. We had a little parachute thing you strap on. You do some wind sprints with it, and it just pulls you back. In cross country and track, sometimes the conditioning at the end was very easy. It was almost like a cool down. And I don't have cool down here. I'm going to spend some time stretching and stuff. But we would take our shoes off and just run barefoot in the grass. So it wasn't really hard, but that always signified the end of practice. We're stretching out the ligaments in our feet, making sure our ankles are strong. And again, get together at the end, 1, 2, 3, go Bucks. That was in high school. We were the Pine River Bucks. So even in an individual practice, you can still kind of mentally put together the same structure. Throughout the season, these individual parts might change or be a larger part of practice or a shorter part of practice, depending on where you're at in the season. And towards the end, what I've seen a lot is not most, but a lot of coaches this is their season. As the season goes on, we get more and more and more intense. At the end of the season, that's our most intense period. We're training the hardest. And this is when kids falter at the end. The kid that's supposed to be the state champion loses to a nobody because they're tired, they're fatigued. And so what I do, what we did in college is at the very end of the season, right before the postseason, that final tournament, it's no longer intense. We cut the intensity totally. Your body's fresh, you're not worn out, all those micro tears and overuse type things that might be starting to creep up, have a little bit of time to heal, and you're hungry. You haven't had a lot of live action, you haven't had a lot of conditioning, you want to play. And oftentimes those teams where we've been able to do this really well have kind of exceeded expectations in the postseason. So this is just a quick graph. It's not very scientific, but it's just how I visualize it, how I think about a season as a whole. Start out easy, slowly, gradually, increase the intensity, and just before the end of the season, boom, we cut off all intensity so they can perform at the end of the season. Some sports have a really long postseason. I think like Major League Baseball is months long, right? So you might not want to cut it instantly. For us, we have the UBAC tournament and it's over. So a week or 2 weeks before the UBAC tournament, we just kind of not very much conditioning at all. I'm not trying to kill them. I'm not trying to make them super tired. I want them to perform at that one tournament. So how the season might look at the beginning of the season. We start putting our tools in place. I light the forge, I get the hammers ready, I pick out my piece of metal. And so I'm going to teach the drills that can then later become part of the warm-up. So in basketball, it's just, okay, this is what I want you to do for the layup drill. So it's efficient, that you're going to pass to this person, you're going to do this. Later on, that's just going to be the warm-up. The technique and tactics is going to take a much larger time, obviously. It's the beginning of the season. Some of your athletes might know the system you're trying to run, some of them might not. You're teaching them procedures. The same with our classes. The first week of class, you don't really get through much content. You're just saying, okay, this is how I want you to turn in papers. This is how I want you to behave. It's the same in practice. We're teaching them. These are the structures I want to happen as the season goes on. These are the drills we're going to be doing. Live action is going to be a small chunk of the practice. Especially our kids here, they come up off the couch to volleyball practice. They didn't train over the summer, they didn't train the season before. They're not ready physically to play a game of volleyball, to play a game of basketball, to play a game of football. So we shouldn't say, okay, go scrimmage each other for an hour on the first day of practice. If somebody's going to get hurt, they don't know, some of them might, but they don't really know how to play together as a team yet. But we give them a small taste. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, very structured situations. And then generally, I'll make my conditioning a lot longer. It's the beginning of the season, it's tough. Can they get through this tough thing together? They get this big sense of accomplishment that, oh my gosh, that was so hard, but you did it. You accomplished this thing. And it also helps to knock the rust off and start to get them into shape. By the middle of the season, we stick the metal in the fire, we start turning up the heat a little bit. The drills in the warm-up are quickly becoming a routine. Hey, this drill we did, do that, that's your warm-up today. That drill we did, it's a little bit more efficient. They know the drills, they can get started right away. That's their warm-up to try to get loose, to start getting focused. The technique and tactics section is roughly equal to how much time I spend on the live action. More or less the same. Whatever we need to start working on, I'm still implementing plays, I'm still implementing defense, and then I want them to have time to practice. Usually this is when I'd have my scrimmages. All right, let's just play, and then I'll stop it. Hey, we worked on this, I saw you did that. Can we change that? Okay, go back to playing. Okay, boom, you made this mistake, stop it. So they get that live action, but it's not intense for the whole time. They get those breaks where I stop them, teach them something, they continue. And then conditioning, I try to do things that build mental toughness. One that I really like, that you guys are free to steal, is I say, okay guys, end of practice is coming. Only thing we're gonna do is 10 push-ups. 10 perfect push-ups. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, we've done push-ups before, we can do this. I say, here are the rules. I'm gonna put my hand in the air, and you only go down and count when my hand drops. If my hand doesn't drop, you don't count. If you mess up, we start over. So then I go, okay, down, down, down. Inevitably, they do the third push-up. Oh, doesn't count. Sorry, guys. We start over. And same thing. And you kind of mess with them a little bit. Make sure you're having fun. It's not a punishment. They're just getting stronger. They need to focus as they're getting tired. In a game, in a basketball game, fourth quarter, they're tired. You need them to focus, to make correct choices, to read the court the right way. In the push-up thing, it's the same thing, just really simplified. Watch the hand. If the hand doesn't go down, you don't go down. And it's great. It's super fun for a coach. They hate it. They start yelling at each other. Eventually, you just make it easy enough where you don't trick them. They do 10 push-ups. Hey, nice job, guys. Remember, focus when you're tired. They got mentally tougher. They did something hard together. And it really helps bring guys together. For the back half of the season, where we've kind of just crossed that halfway point, we're in quarter 3 of the season, this is where I'm starting to really hammer my piece of metal. I'm really pushing them. I'm really getting the last little bits out of it. I'm really getting into shape. I know what my team looks like. Guys have defined roles on my team, and I can really push them. I've got them into shape so far, and now we're really going to kind of push that last stretch home. Because I know in my head, after this, we're going to cut off the intensity quite a bit. The warm-up drills are self-run. The guys at this point, they know what to do. If I'm not there saying do this, the captains, boom, drills are going. Basketball, it's layup lines, shooting drills, whatever it is, whatever you want them to focus on, they know what to do at this point. Technique and tactics becomes a much smaller segment. By now your offense is implemented, they know the strategy, they should know the strategy, they should know the defense you're doing, and it's more specific. We played this friendly against ESM, and our blocking sucked. Let's do this blocking, let's fix these very specific things, and then we're going to try it in live action. At this stage in the season, I generally stopped going from okay, just play, to more situations. Right? We talked about visualization. You're down by 5, and there's 30 seconds left. How are you going to play? You're down by 1, there's 2 seconds left, and the other team has the ball. What do you do? And I just run them through a bunch of situations. So that way, when it comes time for the tournament, they've been in that situation before. You're winning by 10, and there's a minute left. How do you play? So that way they don't, they've been there before. They know what to do. And then conditioning, just like the last section, it should still be a challenge. It's at this stage that I really like to try to do things where they win or lose based on a team. If one person messes up, everybody messed up. If they all succeed, they accomplish it as a team. And just keep drilling in this, you guys are a team. You're one unit. If one guy fails, if one guy messes up, we all fail, we all lose. And so having each other's backs, not always, but just general cases. If they win, it's as a team. If they lose, it's as a team. And then lastly, right before the season, or even during the postseason, I just like to think of it as just sharpening the edge. Right? My axe head has been forged out. I just have to sharpen that edge. My knife's been forged. I just got to sharpen the edge, make sure we're sharp, we're prepared, we're ready to go. The warm-up drills are still run the same way. They still get loose. The kids can run that. Techniques and tactics, again, is very, very, very specific. If you know who you're playing, okay, ISU, they're going to run these plays. Let's practice against that. Let's work on these specific things. The ESM, they're going to do this. Let's focus on that. So the technique and tactics becomes very, very specific. And I like to sharpen the skills that we already have. At this point in the season, you're not implementing anything new, anything drastic. And I like to finish this section with something that they're good at. Because now, okay, I'm volleyball. I want us to spike and to smash the ball. I might even set the net up just a little bit lower than usual. So that way we're going to spike, we're going to smash, and the guys leave that practice feeling like, yeah, our spikes were so good. We're ready, we're going to win. So they start to have this belief, this self-confidence. So finishing this technique, this tactics with something that they're good at, you know they're going to do well at it. And if they don't, if they're kind of, it's an easy practice, they kind of take it easy, just stopping them saying like, hey guys, We're sharpening the edge. We're getting prepared. This is something you're good at, so execute it, do it, right? Live action is a minor piece of the practice. I like to give them just a taste. All right, we just did a bunch of spiking. We're going to play first team to spike 3 times wins. Something minor. They get a little taste for playing, but they leave practice unsatisfied. They didn't get to play enough. They want to play more, right? And you can't drag this out for a long time. This is right before the postseason, a week, maybe 2 weeks. The longer your season, the longer this might be. But generally, for us, going to Academy tournaments, it's the week before Academy. Practice is easy. During Academy, if we get a chance to go in the gym, practice is easy. There's hardly anything. But leave them hungry. And importantly, we don't need injuries. The last thing you want before that big tournament at the end of the season is somebody to roll their ankle. So let's limit the time where they're likely to roll their ankle. Conditioning also diminishes. Your kids are already in shape. You're not going to get them into better shape in a week. They're already in shape. They're not going to lose anything by taking a week off. You could even not have practice, and they would still be in the exact same shape as when you left them after a week. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, yeah, they might start to lose something. But a week off from practice is not going to have much of an impact at all. What they're going to gain is they're going to feel fresh, they're going to feel sharp, they're going to feel up to it, and you want to give them enough to where they get a little sweat going, they get their exercise, they feel like they have practice, they did some things really well, but they're still hungry for more. And then when you get to the game day, you get to that final tournament, it's like you let the dog off the leash and they're ready to go. Just some little tips and takeaways. Conditioning should be hard, it should be a challenge, it should be tough, but it's rarely, if ever, punishment. Even when it is punishment, as a coach, you've kind of got to go through some mental gymnastics, so that way it's not always like, hey, you screwed up, run, right? It's like, hey guys, we're not doing this right. It's probably because we're not in good shape. Let's do some sprints. Right? You're making a mistake, you're not focusing when you're tired, so let's get ourselves tired and then see if we can do it right. Let's practice that. So even when it is a punishment, you're kind of finessing it in a way where it's still about getting better. It's still about getting in better shape. It's still about becoming mentally stronger, mentally tougher. If they fail, try again. Do it again. Do it again. You didn't do it right. This was the standard. This was how fast you need to run a sprint in. Let's do it again. And so this, just based on how you frame it, can have a big impact on the team's morale over the course of the season. One thing to watch out for is burnout or fatigue. Especially, my background is wrestling. Wrestling is a long season in the winter where you're not getting that sunlight, vitamin D, and it's often referred to as the grind because it's just repetitive. You're just mashing into another guy back and forth. And 3/4 of the way through the season, when we're really starting to get intense, guys are just tired. They're sore, they're fatigued, their body hurts. Play a game. Do something fun. All right, guys, warm up today. We're not even going to wrestle. We got the floor hockey sticks. We're going to warm up. We're going to play floor hockey for half an hour. Right? That overuse injuries we just talked about, we're doing something totally different. It just kind of snaps them out of that grind, that repetitive nature. You still get a good workout in, and then the next day you can have a good wrestling practice or a good whatever season you're in practice. It might be unnatural for some athletes or coaches even to take that time off at the end of the season. It seems counterintuitive, right? Like you're senior, they're ready to go, they want to play, and you're like, okay, wait, just take it easy. We're not doing anything today at practice. It's very light practice. And they just want to go, they're amped up, they're excited. But it's so they perform on the day. It's not about that practice, it's about preparing them for that game. And often if their emotions are running high, they're not going to be able to just get themselves in the right mental state for that game. They're going to be over-anxious, over-excited. Bring them back down, preparing their bodies, preparing their mind, and just explain the why. Why are you doing that? Why is practice structured that way? Can help them understand. And then above everything else, your practice structure is what it is, but if you don't have the trust and the buy-in from your athletes, I realize that's not what this presentation was about at all, but that's one of the most important things. If you can just get the trust of the guys that you're coaching or girls that you're coaching, and they believe in what you're doing, you're going to have better results than any practice plan you put together. They have to trust that you have their best interests at heart, that you know what you're doing, that you're going to be able to prepare them, and then you can kind of do whatever you want. But that's how I think about practice, that's how I change it. Jeff just motioned to me, I got a minute or two. So if you got any questions or any comments or anything, fire away.
I have that same problem, that second to last.
Yeah, it's weird.
You know, like, we're tapering, you're gonna have energy, don't burn it.
Yeah.
Save it for the competition. And I'm like, you're right. I was like, thanks.
Yeah, the moment you're like, just let me go, just let me do it. And to be honest, this is the whole reason I wanted to do this presentation, this point right here. Acamus last year, I had an assistant coach, a guy coming in to help me out. The week of Acamus, he had kids at the school for like 4 or 5 hour practices. Like, we're flying to China to play in a long tournament, and like, no, like you shouldn't really have practice at all, just relax. And so he was a young guy, excited, wanted to get the best out of him. Oh, we only have a couple practices, let's go. And so that was the main point why I wanted to put together this whole spiel. So, yeah, that's it.
Thanks.
I haven't shared this with Jeff yet,